everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome along. My name is Jim Carroll. I'm a journalist with the Irish Times in Dublin, Ireland. And I talk very fast, so I'm apologising in advance to the poor translator who has to keep up with me. I'll try and slow down. This basic panel is Music Future Talks about the next generation of music tech, new ideas to push to space. What new ideas are emerging in terms of hardware, software, innovation, and just ideas and imagination, which will be, I suppose, of kind of like support and amplification for the music sector. We're joined here today by two people. I'm going to basically just kind of introduce them. On the far side, we've got Stephen O'Reilly. He works currently with Gramophone, but he's also involved with management, with music tech consultancy, and with many other things as well. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, Stephen.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for having me. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephen O'Reilly. I've been involved in music technology for the last 10 years. Helped launch a number of US-based startups in Europe. I headed up a company called Topspin Media. I don't know if any of you guys might remember Topspin. It was a direct-to-fan commerce company which was acquired by Beats, and then that became Apple Music. I also headed up a company called Mobile Roadie, where we created mobile apps for some of the biggest bands in the world, iPhone and Android apps, everyone from Adele and Madonna to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and lots of small bands. Right now I'm working with a company called Gramophone. We're like in the kind of same space as Sonos, which is a connected device for your stereo at home. It's a little box that you connect your stereo. You open up the Spotify app and you can just play Spotify on your home sound system. I consult a number of different artists and record labels, mainly on the tech side of things. And I also manage a bunch of rock bands, you know, emerging bands, nobody famous. But yeah, I'm fully immersed in digital, direct-to-fan, mobile, and tech in general.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Stephen. Michaela, say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself, and you're going to show us a video.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Great to be in such great company. Stephen, well, I've known Stephen for several years now, and he's been participating in our events. I'm the founder of Music Tech Fest, which is a festival that's been running since 2012, firstly in London, but actually we just realized that we are entering our 10th edition next year, which will be in Berlin, and it's our 5th year, and it's been really full on, and this area has been really sort of exploding all around us. So I think the best way to introduce what this is to actually show you just 1 minute of what actually happens at the festival. So I'm just going to walk over to the tech, which is not particularly sophisticated, but I'm just going to launch this for a minute. Go up.
Production cost. Can't forget about production cost. Can't forget.
I'll let you watch the rest of the highlights online, but it kind of gives you a flavor. And could I ask you to please we could show maybe just a short clip of what the hackers do. Basically, the festival unites musicians, all sorts of artists, big labels, small labels, independents, people doing PhDs in music tech, people doing, I don't know, heads of innovation of big advertising agencies. They all get their hands dirty. They gather together and they make music in a sort of quick and dirty way. They make instruments, they make different sounds, they create things in situ. Some people have stuff that they pre-cooked and they come and showcase it on stage, ends up in sort of impromptu performances, all sorts of things like that happen. It's a very, very free space and it's really grown. So I'm just going to show you some of the sort of results of the hacks, some of the most recent hacks that we've had.
And so he thought we should make something that's like a little bit, works a little bit like a trombone, but you can use it with one hand.
Yeah, so it's simulating a ball inside the actual cube, and you can see it from all different sides. And turning it will change the sounds and affect the filtering of the sounds.
Basically, see 5 audio tracks that are going on, 5 audio loops, and while move the cubes, rotate the cubes, you can just mix these 5 loops, and you can just do a bit of stereo panning, and these LED are the uniters of the stereo panning.
We'll just leave it there, just to give you a flavour of sort of what goes on. Some of these guys are currently incubating and they're building prototypes with this, and this is actually proper businesses that we're building. It's not just one of those things that you build something and then you go for a beer. So.
Okay, Michaela, I'm going to give you €1 million right now, €1 million in cash, to invest in one of these companies, one of these innovations that have come out of your festival. Which one is it going to be and why?
I can't tell you all the details, but there's one that's currently being patented after 9 months of, actually, funnily I should mention €1 million, managed to raise that from the European Commission to support some of our community. And that's been invested in a total of 11 startups. We first created a toolkit, which was made out of some of the best tech that we could assemble from all the research centers. Created a piece of hardware that's a microboard, low latency, that's used for gesture interfaces, so it can be used for wearables, all sorts of applications. He created 11 products were created in May and June in both Music Tech Fest and in Sonar. And then one of the products is already being patented. So yes, that one, definitely. And I can tell you because, I mean, I can't tell you the details of the patent, of course, but actually it's serious stuff. And it's not just for music. This patent is actually something that's applicable across different industries.
Okay, so that's something that's coming from the gestures and the wearables department. I mean, when you look at what's going on, kind of, Steve, in the spaces that Michaela's talking about there, and that were kind of demonstrated at the festival at the Hackers, I mean, can you see a tipping point coming with these things? Can you see a tipping point, say, for like this sort of technology when it comes to the music space, and what could it be?
Yeah, well, I've seen it kind of firsthand. Like, I've been working with an incubator in Newcastle, just helping them out with some consultancy, and there's a bunch of guys there building hardware products for one of them is for guys that are in an orchestra. So instead of having to carry all your sheets, this is like a dual screen iPad, if you will, that's been rolled out to orchestras all around the world. And one of the great things about today is that, like, you can kind of crowdfund these. There's Kickstarter type models. You kind of validate the idea. You can come up with a video and like an MVP on your own. Then you can go to market with Kickstarter. Or there's a gentleman from Ireland called Liam Casey, PCH. So this is a company that you can create your hardware product, your idea, and then you'll take it to this guy who, like, every Apple phone has all his components in it, Android phones, and all sorts of hardware. So it's all of the things that Michaela and her team have been like creating. They're very viable now. In the past, you needed 10 million quid just to get the thing going, but now you can sell it a year before it even gets out there.
It's very exciting because it shows that basically technology is slowly catching up to our imagination. But like at the same time, there are barriers there. I mean, let's talk a little bit about that before we start, I suppose, exploring our imagination and what can be done. Let's talk about some of the barriers. What barriers do you see, say, from the music side, Michaela, in terms of acceptance of what's going on in terms of tech innovations and changes?
Well, copyright and rights restrictions on content and stuff like that. I mean, it's just a minefield. I advise to the European Commission also, so we've been pushing music and music technology forward in sort of the whole area of importance for Europe, because Europe is actually super strong in this. It's really, really great. But at the same time, of course, we have like a minefield in terms of legislation. And so, as everybody here is very well aware of, there's currently copyright reform going through, and we have to really work on it really hard so that it benefits the community rather than it sort of ends up kind of benefit for the few. So yeah.
One of the other barriers is like some people don't take it seriously, just because it's not a guitar or it's not a drum, but one of the greatest things I've seen over the past few years was the Björk by Ophelia show. I went to Iceland and she'd done a show in a room like this, and she was playing with all these crazy instruments, and it was just magic, it was real instruments, and for me that was kind of a tipping point where Björk, who's an international artist, is putting out an album that's made with all these crazy iPad things, physical things you put on a table, so that was a tipping point for me.
The saxophone is a piece of technology. I mean, it's, so everything that we're inventing nowadays, right? I mean, it's just that it's become cheaper. I mean, I always say, if the kids in New York had access to lots of saxophones back in the day, you'd have had a completely different scene. I mean, the cheapest thing was to get a turntable and start sort of scratching it, right? So nowadays, it's democratizing this process so much. I mean, you could just get some sensors and some components for no money whatsoever. You just need to be creative, and you can come up with amazing stuff. So it's brilliant.
Do both of you think that musicians are beginning to develop being a bit more trust when it comes to technology? Because one thing that's been a problem with technology over the years has been a lack of transparency in many ways, and it's also been a kind of a case of shoot first and ask questions later. Go in, grab the rights, do something with it, and then kind of turn around to the rights holders and go, okay, it's done. Is that changing? Are musicians being a bit more trusting of tech? Are they beginning to kind of see the appeal of it and see what can be done? Or are there still holdouts?
It depends on the musicians sometimes. There are some guys that are like totally paranoid about technology and paranoid about streaming and paranoid about the business side of things. Like someone like Tom York, for example, who...
Tom York is paranoid about everything.
Yeah. But he's like, he makes electronic music, he uses technology, and there's guys like him that have a kind of negative association with tech and paranoia around the business and stuff. But then there's other folks that embrace it. There's an artist in the US called D.A. Wallach who works for Spotify. He's a artist ambassador, and he has his own album and stuff out. And he's just a great guy for using technology and everything that he does. He's just this solo singer-songwriter. And I think there's people like him that are kind of changing the perception of tech. And I guess, even a product like Spotify for me is a wonderful thing, where the democratization of music. You can just as an artist, for me and the bands I manage, we have a digital distributor. We use Cobalt, and we use Cobalt and we use The Orchard for 2 different bands, and you can upload a track, and in a week it's on all of the biggest music streaming services in the world, and you have a real chance. We got one of my bands got playlisted on Spotify a couple of weeks ago, and we got like 35,000 plays. Just being put on one playlist. So that's technology in a nutshell. Helping and empowering artists and musicians and managers and folks like you guys.
Well, you have guys who have experience with This Is My Jam, so like music tech startups who are now completely dictating sort of where the whole Spotify playlisting is going, right? Yeah. So I mean, our community is actually completely influencing some of these kind of some of the people that are sort of really big. But on the side of sort of legislation and stuff, I mean, on the side of sort of rules and regs, we subscribe to completely different sets of rules. I mean, we are part of the open source mentality. So we've created our own sort of licenses for open products, for instance, and our community thrives on the so-called sort of open innovation principles, which you think are kind of la-la land, but actually when you try it, it really works. It's always a combination of some of it is free, some of it is accessible to all, and some of it you can register as proprietary, and it really works well because it kind of enables it for everybody, it enables participation at a much grander scale. It speeds up innovation, but also means that you can get a little slice for yourself as well.
Yeah, but I mean, for some bands, and particularly for some of the kind of permanent establishment around the music industry, that's very hard for them to get their heads around.
When they join a community, and we actually do get now really amazing musicians. Of course, apart from the pioneers like Graham Massey and Matt Black, and then some of the more modern ones like Scanner or Team Exile or Leafcutter John. All those guys are sort of part of our community, and they get it. They totally get it, obviously. But you get other musicians who go, "Oh, am I like too old to join your gang? Can I like try it out?" And when they do, they get it immediately. It's just because it's so instantly kind of when you get your hands dirty with it, you get it.
Totally, because that was the thing that struck me watching that video. It's like it was hands-on. It was like, I mean, it was the ethos of the maker community coming into music, and like I suppose like maybe it's just an attraction to gadgets, but when you see the actual things and you realise you're picking something up, it's like with gramophone. You're picking it up, you can actually feel it.
Yeah.
It's much different than kind of like content and the software side with something like Spotify playlist.
Yes, like a few weeks ago in London, there was like a Red Bull music jam thing where they got a bunch of the guys that kind of are at Michaela's event, at Music Tech Fest, and they brought in 8 artists. So they brought in all these tech guys with crazy ideas, and they had artists in the room at the Red Bull studios in London, and over a weekend they collaborated and came up with all these crazy ideas, possibly inspired by what you started.
Yeah, no, we worked with them originally, yeah.
But I think the musicians were not even aware of like what they were walking into. They didn't really think about the possibilities before they went into the room, and then all of a sudden.
Is that because in many ways, sorry for cutting across you, Stephen, but is that in some ways because many musicians have become quite conservative?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, they're used to processes, aren't they? So basically I've named it gunk, geek punk. It's this idea of being completely like quick and dirty, rough and ready with technology. The idea is that, when you went into this whole kind of smooth production techniques, which is an art in itself, let's face it, but we went into that kind of whole mode of like stuff had to be produced and overproduced and auto-tuned and whatever else. And suddenly people get their hands on something, they can express themselves. The immediacy of expression can be really rough, but it's awesome because the audience just jumps at it. They respond to the emotion. So this gunk movement that we're kind of now sort of basically promoting because it really works has been a real surprise for us. You have to kind of think about it after it happens and go, what just happened there that really works? But we discover it.
Is it a case as well that, as more and more musicians are actually exposed to what tech geeks and gunk workers are producing, that they'll get it as well? You said earlier on a very interesting thing. You kind of said that some musicians are looking for permission to join your community. Is it are those walls disappearing, or how can those walls be kind of brought down?
I think when the more mainstream artists start like using some of these things. That's when it will become even more accepted. I remember, I don't know if you guys remember Little Boots. There's a girl, and she used to, she had this instrument called a tenorion where you press little buttons and it kind of programs triggers sounds and stuff. So she had this tenorion, and then some guy created the exact version of the tenorion instrument on an iPad. And then loads of, it was like for a period of time, a couple of years ago, it was one of the top downloaded apps. And there were loads of kids like creating music that in the past you would have needed to know your chords or your scales on your piano. And I just think that's, the iPad for me is an amazing tool for music creation as well. It really opens it up for anyone that, you don't need to do piano lessons really. if you don't want to spend all that time, you can get straight into production. Yeah.
If you're a creative person and someone gives you a new tool that you don't need like a massive learning curve to learn how to use, or even if you do need a learning curve, but you have someone next to you who's like really brilliant at it or who can teach you how to use it. We have people who learn to use entirely new tools overnight, and the next day they're on stage and they're improvising and they're loving it. They're absolutely loving it. Because if you're creative, you're gonna try and express yourself in your own way with this tool. And for instance, one of the pieces of our toolkit that we created in order to get these products out is built by IRCAM. And it's a microboard, it's a postage stamp microboard, low latency, so basically like an Arduino, but it has, if you try to do sound with Arduino, is a problem with latency because you just have to add too many components. So you have a microboard, postage stamp, low latency for gesture-driven applications. You can embed that in wearables. We have a team that's now, one of the startups that we're supporting, have embedded it into a skateboard, and you can do playlisting with a skateboard. I mean, it's such a fantastic platform because you can get all these guys from gaming now to start writing apps for this, right? So I mean, it just flies. You know, once you have, you just need one component like that will allow you to do it, and people will interpret it in different ways.
I suppose let's do a little bit of kind of future scoping here and see what's coming down the road. Let's start with sort of like, I mean, one thing, everyone in the room here is old enough to remember CDs and when digital downloads were kind of in their pump. So you've got streaming in its pump right now. Do you think something's going to come along and replace streaming in the next 5 or 10 years?
For me, I
replace,
can't.
it's a bit like, you know, it's a bit like saying, you know, is TV going to replace cinema or is cinema going to replace theatre? I mean, I don't think it works quite like that. I think streaming has its own function and it has various different permutations, various different uses, especially like delivery of content is one type of you know, activity that's really important. But there are other things that are emerging, you know, collective music making, people being connected through not just through their devices, but through these instruments they make. I mean, this is the wonderful thing. It's not just this sort of new instrument or new item that you're making noise with. It's not in isolation. It doesn't exist in isolation. It can link up to the cloud. It can start delivering content to the cloud. It can get content off the cloud. It can you can jam with your mates, and all sorts of wonderful things that happen. And I also think, you know, music is such a powerful tool for communication that bridges, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but it bridges cultures like nothing else, right? Would you agree? And I know it's a cliche, but it's absolutely true. In today's day and age, when, you know, the whole kind of communications are speeding up, music is starting to take center stage. And I think we are yet to witness some really amazing things.
Yeah, like just to finish off on the streaming question, it's still a very small business, you know, it's not what it can be. There's only, like, streaming is not mainstream kind of right now. It's only at its infancy, and there's a lot of more users to come on board, you know. When my mum has it, or when my older sisters start using Spotify, then it's going to be more ubiquitous. I think what will improve is the media experience, you know, so there'll be like immersive experiences, so like album artwork can come to life, you know, and it might be inside Spotify, or it could be things like, you know, these augmented reality, what's the headset thing, you know, that Facebook purchased,
Oculus
you know,
Rift,
Oculus Rift, yeah, like that kind of stuff. I went to see, I was in the Universal offices earlier this year, and the Who done like a Quadrophenia Oculus Rift experience, you know, so you can, like, you put on the thing, you look like a complete idiot, but you put on the thing and you're listening to Quadrophenia, the album, but you're looking around London in the late 60s, you know, and all the mods in Brighton and stuff. So that kind of immersive stuff, which I thought was like Star Trek, but now it's actually a reality. You know, it's becoming more cost effective as well to build that weird stuff.
One of the teams we're incubating is actually EEG driven. So they have a headpiece that doesn't cover your eyes, so you don't look quite so much an idiot, because I mean everybody's a bit so strange when they kind of, like, you know, they look blind. So it's an EEG driven interaction, music interaction. That's also gesture driven. It sort of reacts to your emotion and to gesture. And you can interact with the other person and react with emotion to the other person. This is what they're developing currently. This is one of the ones we're
Interesting. And I also I was at the BBC last week, and they had the Google Cardboard, but they done like, you know, so you put your phone in a little cardboard box, which is like a cheap Oculus Rift, if you will. And they had like some experiences that they're working on, you know, 360 filming of shows, that are actually live, you know, they're filming stuff in 360, and you put your phone in a little box and you just hold it up to your eyes like this, have weird 3D goggles, and you can experience TV in a new kind of way. You know, you can look around the set of Strictly Come Dancing, you know, it's interesting.
It's interesting that both of you kind of, like, when you're talking there about the stuff you've seen recently, like there's a show element to it, there's a live show element to it. One thing that's always struck me as very strange is that when it comes to tech innovations in the live sector, it's fairly non-existent, and most people are trying to get more slices of the same small pie when it comes to ticketing and things like that. Are there more innovations coming down the line as you can see applicable to the live side?
To live music?
Absolutely.
I think just it hasn't been cracked even on mobile. You know, like, so when you go to a gig, your phone doesn't really give you anything based on knowing that you've walked into the O2 to see U2. They were playing in London last night. So like that kind of, the opportunities to connect with fans in a venue and do interesting stuff on your phone, because your phone knows everything about you and knows who you are, where you are, the bands you like, you know, what you're doing. So I think there's a lot of stuff to come, like to incentivize people to buy more merchandise, or to, connect with other fans, or to, give your email to the band when you walk into the venue. That kind of stuff is, should already be happening, but not so much. I think Apple and beacons, the whole beacons technology that's built into the iPhone as well is quite powerful.
Yeah, I mean, but at the core of our festival, we put performance right from the beginning. So it was like, this was going to happen in real space, and you're going to interact with real people. And, for us, this is really important space. It allows people to really kind of communicate with each other at a totally different level. So it could be mass kind of festivals, and it could be just you and your mates in a room. And both those situations, I think, are just thrilling. And there are lots of apps being developed for various different sort of applications in this environment, and bits of hardware now that we can do wearables and those, like, as you say, in gramophone, and those sort of systems that allow you to interact in home environments.
And definitely, I mean, the customers are really open to trying these things out when it's good. I mean, you mentioned earlier on, like, Sonos as well as gramophone, and the amount of, like, products they're selling. But at the same time, if you do it badly and do a mess with, like, electric jukebox or Pono, people immediately see it for what it is.
You become a laughing stock. Like the whole Pono thing is, it's not looking very good for those guys. They raised a lot of money, but to be fair, the guys at Sonos have built an amazing product, and Sonos is still really, like, their turnovers in the billions, but they're still a very, like, their potential market is going to be insane, and have a great product. I got to listen to the new Sonos 5 speakers, which has like a radar kind of built into it, where it can, like, project sound out, and it knows where the wall is in your room, so it knows, like, what sound to push out.
Spatialization of audio.
Spatialization,
yeah. And so they're also, of course, very importantly, communicating. The speakers communicate to each other. They don't use the Wi-Fi network, so that's like a really, really important move in technology. But I mean, they're really, really great. There's really great tech, but I think what's at the core of it is this idea of Internet of Things. It's such a boring term, It's not about things anyway. It's about people. But it's this thing about connecting devices and connecting things that you make. Everything is connected in one sort of network, and it doesn't have to be the sort of the internet. It can be an intranet. It can be a sort of an area, a space that you create. So these sorts of events, I think in future you can create such incredible experiences.
On the live side of things as well, one thing that I thought was really amazing is the projection kind of stuff that U2 have been doing on their world tour. So like the whole stadium is the stage. Like video that's running in a 360 kind of thing. The projection mapped the whole venues out in advance, and they're putting on these, like, amazing shows. So it's not just a stage anymore. It's like it's all around you.
It's better than a hologram.
Yeah, it's amazing.
This projection mapping, of course, is incredibly popular, but that's pre-cooked, and it's fantastic. It can be a beautiful piece of art. But at the same time, you have generative environments. So, for instance, some of the innovation that we've been working with Philips Hue lighting, which has got an API. And so we're combining sound and light. So for a musician to generate not just his musical environment, but also his lighting environment that sort of reacts to his or her music is really interesting as another way of performing. It's something that wasn't available to musicians before.
I think what's amazing as well is the fact that technology has caught up with people's imagination in many ways. That, like, all these things we thought were impossible. I remember being in meetings a decade ago, or a decade or more ago, when people were talking, wouldn't it be amazing to have so many tunes available at the flick of a button, and you're thinking about Spotify all those years on. And it's incredible, as you're talking there, it becomes very aware to me that the technology that's existing right now really is properly in play for musicians.
Yes, I would say that. I mean, would you agree? I mean, it's like with any of these sort of new things, they mature to the point where they can be really embedded in all the activities. And I think we're now at the point where we have, enough bandwidth. For instance, Spotify is on tap in Sweden. We are currently based in Sweden. And then we move around Europe quite a lot, and in Sweden it's literally like water. I mean, it's on everybody. Everybody has Spotify. It's included in your phone bill, and it's everywhere. So you have this kind of when that becomes the norm, and when you have that sort of high bandwidth, we have 1 gig up, 1 gig down when we're living there. Then all these things become a possibility. Connecting to the grid, getting the content, messing with content, putting it back up, whatever it is you want to do. So the technology has matured to the point where it really allows for anything. You just need your imagination.
Cool. We've got sometimes some questions from the floor. If anyone's got some questions, put your hand up and get a microphone to you.
Everybody's very shy.
Everybody's gone very quiet.
Go on, ask the question.
There's a microphone.
Get a microphone to you now.
Hi, I'm Andrew Dubber. I'm the director of Music Tech Fest. I came along to the second one. Michaela is the founder. I wanted to just talk about the fear of technology that you identified, just really, really briefly. And I don't think that's what it is. I think that's what people present it as, but I don't think that's the underlying problem. I think what people have an underlying problem with is a fear of loss of agency. Like there is another major organization that's come along to exploit me, is the fear, not this has digits in it or this has buttons on it.
It's definitely not that. It's definitely not the latter. It's not the fear of the actual technology. It's the fear of the abuse of those people. And you mentioned there about another agency coming along. I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it really comes down to like a lack of transparency more than anything else. I definitely see it with a lot of the smaller music tech startups that I've come across. A lot of musicians just don't trust where they're coming from. They don't think they get music, and that's obviously a bit of a snobbish view as well from the musician's point of view.
Well, there's a lot to do with the VC culture in that, is that there is this very kind of exploitative, we need to make this enormous and then sell it, and exit strategy and all those kinds of approaches, this kind of rapacious approach to music as a form of capital. Whereas the people who make the music, that's not what they make it for by and large. They're not making it because it's a great get-rich-quick scheme. They make it because they're artists and they want to make music and they want to, share it with the world and so on. But they're in a vulnerable position. They're very aware of that. So any new technology that they don't understand, that somebody else can make a lot of money out, they're very aware that they're the thing that is having money made out of them. So the thing that we try to do with Music Tech Fest is to say, no, you can actually have some agency in this. You can pull things apart, take them to bits, make new things, get involved with the process of technology, and actually have some say in how you communicate your music and in what ways you communicate it. But the transparency thing, I agree, is a really major issue. It's the biggest problem with Spotify. It's because they won't tell people how the economics works. And people need to know that. They need to know that because they're owned in part by the major record labels, that even if you're not signed to a major record label, you're making money for the major record labels.
Yeah. The problem there is that transparency is unpalatable to most musicians.
Absolutely. So I just want to wave a flag for Bandcamp on that level, because that's the most transparent, the most kind of, in terms of communicating your music to an audience where you can have an economic relationship with your fans. You know exactly where the money's going, you know how it's divided up, you know who gets what, and it's right there in front of you. So yay Bandcamp.
Yeah,
I will agree.
Yeah, but I must say, I think the whole Spotify get a very bad rap from a few people that have a bad impression. Like Spotify, I manage bands, I look at my statements, and the most money we make every month is from Spotify. They paid out $2 billion last year. No, to the music industry. And they've tried to become more transparent, in fairness to them. There's a whole Spotify for Artists website which they created, which tells you exactly how much you get paid for stream. It's tiny, but it's all out there.
I know from talking to some independent labels and distributors that the Spotify statements are the most scariest things that most musicians see, because they see the truth. They're not signed to labels, and as Landry just kind of said, some of the money is going to major labels, but they see how little is coming back because they can see how little their music's been played, and sometimes that's the truth. That's not very nice to see.
Yeah, true. But also there are folks that, like Ed Sheeran, I think he made $20 million last year on Spotify, so it works for people like him. He's a massive champion. He's like the #1 Spotify artist right now. Taylor Swift has a beef, but she'll change her mind. She'll be back there very soon. I bet a tenner.
I'm sure if Adele decides to go with Spotify this time around, she'll beat Ed Sheeran.
Well, Adele, when she put out her new single, she put it straight on Spotify, straight on iTunes. She put it across all platforms immediately. So that in itself is validation of what they're doing, because XL, the record label, play hardball. You know what I mean? They're a brilliant label, and they wouldn't have put it on Spotify if it didn't make sense.
Okay.
We're interested in roots for the long tail of musicians, and I think there's just tremendous talent out there that's not in the sort of, position of Adele and Ed Sheeran. And for those guys, there are systems like Bandcamp, and the sort of work that we're doing is really pushing some of these guys sort of to have, enabling them to have a career, enabling them to have businesses, enabling them to earn money from what they love doing. And I love seeing that. So, it's just something that we're really, really keen to do. I'm sure you are too. I mean, you manage musicians, you want to see some of them succeed. So
yeah,
you want systems that are more open.
Yeah, and it takes people like yourself and your event to uncover those hidden gems. It's a bit like Steve Wozniak. He's a guy that was screwing around in his garage until he met Steve Jobs.
I'm totally happy
Steve
to
Jobs
be compared
understood.
to Steve Wozniak. Thank you very much.
But if you get my point, it took someone with a commercial mindset to get this nerd out of his bedroom. Yeah.
Okay. Last question from the floor? No? Okay, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Stephen and Michaela. Please give them a round of applause. And thank you as well to the tech team here as well for all their help, and especially the translators. Muchas gracias.
Yeah, we were babbling very fast.
Thank you.